I felt that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like Nelson Mandela, that what he signed for, the work of the ICJ is becoming a reality, and we're bringing the Genocide Convention to life. Because if you want to kill any nation, you must kill its future. There's no state that will stand and say, indeed, you are correct. We are committing genocide. It is established that you cannot justify genocide, even on self-defense.
Enjoy a wide range of views on this channel. Spread the fire.
Spread the fire.
Spread the fire.
Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX, and today I am extremely excited to be joined by none other than the Minister for Justice in South Africa, Mr. Ronald Lamola. Minister, thank you so much for joining us on SMWX.
Thank you very much, Caesar, and to the listeners.
You might be seen as one of the most important politicians in global politics right now, given the role you've played in our case at the ICJ. I'd really like to dive into that case, but before we get into the substance and the issues, could you take us behind the scenes of how this came about and how the idea for this case came into the minds of leaders like you in the South African government?
No, thank you very much. Is the fact that obviously the UN processes, Security Councils, the General Assembly, and so forth, and all intentions to find the ceasefire could not work, and also for humanitarian intervention. And we knew that we are signatories to the Genocide Convention, and we're also aware that also Israel also is signatory to the Genocide Convention. In fact, they are amongst the first states to have signed. We signed around 1998. It was one of the first that our former President Mandela participated in. And we said, maybe this could be what we can take forward to put pressure to the state of Israel to ceasefire and to allow humanitarian aid, which is what is really needed. And obviously also the statements of the leadership in Israel did not also help, which showed the genocidal intent. So we truly believe that we had a case that we could then engage with cabinet, which the matter was taken through all the cabinet processes, and cabinet approved that indeed we must take this matter to the ICJ.
Can you tell us anything about cabinet that you're allowed to divulge, just about what that moment was like in the cabinet meeting? Was it a unanimous thing? And what were your feelings just when that came into cabinet, when you knew but the rest of South Africa didn't know this momentous step was going to be taken?
Obviously, it's always a good feeling to know that you are doing something out of principle, and also informed by the situation, and also that you know that it will be a much needed intervention, particularly for the children in the occupied Gaza. So it was something that was very heartwarming, and we felt that it's something that we will also need to put a well-rounded team, diversified, but also with expertise in international law, both from our own country and also wherever that we could find people committed to the cause in the globe. And we were glad that there were people in the globe who were willing to come into the space to add their expertise.
And the president gave this his full support. What have the conversations been with him over this issue?
Yes, he did provide his full support, and he was very forthright that we have a duty in terms of the convention to stop what is currently happening, because he has also participated in various international fora where there was no headway in terms of a ceasefire, in terms of humanitarian intervention. You will also remember that he had just addressed the climate change conference in Dubai. And also the UN Secretary General had invoked Article 99 of the UN, which has never been invoked, which was historical. And it was vetoed by the US at the Security Council. So it was clear that we needed something very drastic and urgent. So he really put his weight behind it, and at the end he also gave a thumbs up to the team.
Did he call you like he called the Springbok coach at the end and said, "Wow, this was amazing"?
Yes. At the beginning, yes, he did call.
Did you have
the
a
whole
private
team
conversation? That's
At the beginning, yes, he did call for the whole team.
What was that?
He spoke to the whole legal team, and we allowed some public view of when he was encouraging the team.
Yeah.
But also, obviously, after the hearing, we also spoke, and we felt he felt that we have presented a compelling case.
Yeah. Just on a personal note, and before again we get into the substance, because I have a lot of international law questions, and I know you have great expertise in that field now. You're obviously a lawyer yourself as well. But on a personal level, can you take us into, the journey there, and what the atmosphere was like beforehand? Anything that maybe we haven't been able to see in the media, about what it was like for you personally and some of the conversations that were happening. You were under a lot of pressure. Of course, the case went well, and I think we delivered it spectacularly eventually, but could have gone either way, and I'm sure that you were all quite nervous in some way to see how things were going.
Yeah, of course. It was some of us the first time to appear in such a court, the highest organ of the UN, international adjudication of disputes between states. So obviously you will have a bit of nerves, think about how you will handle it. But we had a very good team. People that have been there, we just said, let's relax and let's do what it's convey the message. The court just want to hear the message, and that's what we focused on. And before the team sat together and said this should be the focus, and everyone, even after the hearing, so it was a very good camaraderie amongst the team that we indeed, let's say this is for the good of humanity, but also the feeling after was also very good, because even as we were going in, there was a lot of support outside for Israel and also for Palestine. And the people from Palestine and those who were supporting that, they also gave us and showed us a lot of love, which also encouraged us to understand that it's in the interest of humanity what we're doing. So we need to put our best foot forward.
Yeah. And how did you feel when you were making your speech and just before and afterwards?
Yeah, obviously I felt that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like Nelson Mandela, that what he signed for, the work of the ICJ is becoming a reality, and we're bringing the Genocide Convention to life. As and when we were presenting the team, the case, and defining what the Genocide Convention means. So we felt that we're bringing it to life. So it was a very heartwarming and humbling experience.
Yeah. Let's get into some aspects of the case. There's one thing I do want to clarify, because I've seen some international law observers and commentators saying, well, why did we go for genocide, which is the hardest thing to prove eventually? Let's say once we get past the provisional measures, when we could have gone for crimes against humanity or war crimes. But as I understand it, the only way we could get there as a third party was because the Genocide Convention allows us to do that, whereas other conventions like the Geneva Conventions wouldn't allow us to do that. So that's why we kind of strategically used that convention to get to the court, in addition to believing in the substance of the case.
Yeah, and also the reality is that there is an ongoing urgent situation, and also the Genocide Convention deals with humanitarian issues, and as you read the definition, it also deals with an intent to wipe up a whole state, issues of civilian infrastructure, which is what is happening, flattening of the whole of the Gaza Strip and so forth. So that gave rise to the convention being some of these things being within the realm of the convention, and obviously being backed also by some of the statements of the leadership of that country, which is an urgent situation. So this convention also give an opportunity for an urgent indication or provisional measures.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's go into some of those provisional measures, because I think in the media conversation so far that I've seen, everything is focused around the accusation of, a plausible case of genocide, which of course is part of the case. But there are other things that South Africa is calling for, just apart from that, which are things like humanitarian aid, punishing people who incite genocide. So take us through some of the other aspects of the case that are not just about the accusation that genocide is happening, because I think that's got lost a lot in the debate.
Yeah, obviously, the humanitarian intervention for us, we believe, is also a very urgent. The situation is dire because it's an occupied space with only Israel controlling access in and out of the Gaza Strip. So it does need an urgent intervention. And from all the bodies of the UN, they have indicated that it is impossible to provide humanitarian aid with the ongoing bombings, because it's one of the exceptional wars where there is a huge number of staff of the UN that has been killed, journalists, a huge number of a civilian population. That's why the Secretary General of the UN described this as unprecedented. It's not like he has not seen wars, he has seen others, but he described this as very unprecedented levels. So that is the other aspect of the case that obviously we had to deal with. But the other aspect is also the death and the killing of young kids. In this environment, the number of young kids that are being killed, it's unprecedented in any war. So if you look at it, it also suits what we are dealing with, because if you want to kill any nation, you must kill its future. So when you are killing the young kids, you are killing the future of Palestinians. In any environment, if you kill the kids, and there won't be a future Lamola or a future any other person. So this is an important aspect that also the court had to look into.
No, absolutely. Let's come on to some other aspects of the case before we get on to the substance again. And of course, one of, to the extent that you can touch on it, Israel's legal team's arguments was trying to stop us at the procedural gates and saying, there really is no dispute here. Obviously, we didn't have a chance to reply. What do you make of this procedural argument that we didn't jump the hurdle of a dispute, and so the merits even of the provisional measures case shouldn't be considered?
Yeah, obviously we anticipated some of them because we knew that we've got a very strong case on substance.
Yeah,
their strategy will be to try and kill the case on technicalities. So our one of our advocates, Professor Dukat, dealt with the point that the jurisdictional point has been established because there has been engagement from the South African DERCO by DG Dengo with Israel, his counterparts, and there was no response that was satisfactory. Therefore, we had to proceed because the situation is urgent and dire. There's no state that will stand and say, indeed, you are correct. We are committing genocide. They will never announce that they are doing it. So it's something which is a function of the environment, the definitions, and the outcomes of what you are able to see. And what we're able to see and hear does to us place a case that there is ongoing a genocide that could be plausible to be adjudicated upon by the court.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems strange to me. I mean, we went to the ICC already, with this complaint. We've done so much at the UN. It just seems strange to me that the court wouldn't consider this case because someone didn't send an email at a certain time. especially when the situation is so dire and urgent.
Yeah, you can't really rely on technicalities to kill this kind of a matter where there's ongoing plausible genocide.
It would be disappointing.
Yeah.
Of course, we made a case about the sheer amount of devastation to infrastructure, the amount of killing happening in Gaza, the living conditions. And Israel's response was not necessarily to deny those facts, but to say that, all of this is being done because of the horrific, what I would call terror attack of October the 7th. What did you make of that? Because it seemed to me that was we had already preempted that, through Professor Vaughan Lowe's intervention. And while it might be relevant to the overall situation, it didn't seem very legally relevant to the acts that we were accusing Israel of taking.
Yeah, as you said, Prof, indeed anticipated this point because in terms of the jurisprudence of the court, it is established that you cannot justify genocide even on self-defense. Whatever the atrocities at its level, a genocide cannot be a justification for self-defense. So there is indeed case law jurisprudence for the court. So that point can't stand. And secondly, you will remember that we, even in our presentation, we when we wanted to show the genocidal intent or plausibility of it, we demonstrated that you can't say the target is just Hamas and then you go for the whole population. You should still live within the boundaries of the rules of law, of war or of engagement. Because now when you go for young kids, the elderly, hospitals, everything, I mean, if in the strictest terms of your target, you should be able to, as with the capability of the state of Israel, and we demonstrated that they use the most recent technology, pinpoint drones and the technology that is able to deal with the pinpointing of particular targets. So why will you then go for the whole population, flatten buildings and so forth, if you have got a particular target and it is indeed in self-defense? So this has gone far beyond. It's not proportionate to the point of self-defense.
Just to zoom out on some of the statements that have been made outside the court, we had spokespeople for the Israeli government accusing us as South Africa, of being Hamas's legal team. What do you make of those kinds of statements, and how do you respond to those accusations?
Yeah, I think it's nonsensical and irrelevant for the case. We have been very clear. Is the case presented by the South African government? It's a product of our cabinet, and the team has been put together by the South African government. All the aspects of the case, and we are doing so in line with the convention. If we want to even boil down, we can state that there is no bilateral relation between Hamas and the South African government, or if you want to stretch it further and go even to the governing party, we don't have any bilateral relations with Hamas. Even in court, we were with the state of Israel, with the state of Palestine representative, because that is where we have got bilateral relations. And to the point that they argue that the leadership of the ANC met Hamas and so forth. I mean, in any conflict, you meet a number of people to understand the conflict, what could be done to resolve it, and so forth. It does not mean that you are working with them and you are plotting some attack and so forth. But you want to intervene in the situation, so you must be able to engage all the role players.
One thing that struck me as well after the case is we had the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, basically saying, even before judgment has been rendered, that the Hague won't stop us. What are your thoughts on that kind of statement coming from such a senior leader in Israel when, you've got the world's apex court, sitting on one of its most important decisions in its history, and, our president, who, as you know, I've criticized, many times, but I think when a success is a success, you have to call it out. We haven't tried to preempt the judgment. We haven't come out and personally attacked anyone in Israel, and yet we have a prime minister saying basically what the Hague decides is what the Hague decides.
Yeah, I think it's panic speak. He is panicking. Secondly, it's part of what the Israel government believe, which is exceptionalism. They believe the conventions of the UN and whatever does not apply to them. They apply to all of us. And this convention was created for them, therefore, it can't be applicable to them. So I think that is what is panicking speak by him. But at the end, I do believe that we have shifted the needle because you will remember just a day or two before the court hearing, the Attorney General did issue a circular that will be prosecuted for inciting violence and so forth. So they are beginning to really, the papers have had an impact, including the issues of humanitarian that they raised in court and so forth. So I do think that it's just panicking, and the court's decision will be authoritative. I believe it must be enforced, and it will help the international community to have that finding, because it will be factual, it will be authoritative. It can then help with the political pressure to the state of Israel.
One might even say whatever the court rules, and just building on your point there, it leads me to think, in some ways, South Africa has already won. No matter what the court says, to the extent that the debate has moved to, in serious international law circles, diplomatic circles, a real debate about, is this a genocide? Now yes. People might go on different sides of that debate, but even 2 months ago, 1 month ago, even the most radical scholars weren't prepared to say, that genocide needs to be invoked here. But now it seems to be part of the debate, and whatever the court rules, it seems that we have at least brought that to global public attention, that we can seriously discuss this question. And that seems to be a victory already, no matter what the court decides.
Yes, that is an important victory, because you will remember prior to the case, the state of Israel was hiding behind propaganda, and the world was seeing the war in the eyes of the state of Israel's propaganda. So what the case has been able to do was to forensically detail in a non-sensational way the case, its effects, the speeches, and the effects of those speeches with regards to the genocidal intent, and also for the world to really know properly how Gaza is situated and what is the role of the state of Israel as an occupier. So all that is now known by the whole world, and the experts, they also had now to be able to see, including the reports of the various bodies of the UN that have been ignored by the state of Israel in proper forensic detail without sensationalism.
To the extent that you're privy to it, it seems easy in hindsight, the way that South Africa structured our case. But can you take us into, decisions like not wanting to be too sensational? Because we could have shown some of the worst images you can ever imagine and, bombarded the court with pictures of children. We also seemed to me to make a conscious decision not to try and personally attack even politicians in Israel or make disparaging remarks towards their legal team, and really keep our case very focused and very tight. In hindsight, that seems like the obvious thing to do, but that must have been a strategic decision. And why was that kind of decision taken, and what were the kinds of conversations about? How do we present this case in the most effective way for the global audience?
Yeah, it's because we wanted the global audience and the court to focus on the facts. because that is what has been missing previously, because of the distortion by the state of Israel with the amount of propaganda and so forth. So we wanted to take the sensationalism away from the case, deal with the facts, and deal with the applicable law. And we were also able to explain to the court that some of the gruesome videos, we will not do them because we don't want to sensationalize the matter. We want the court to listen to what we believe will persuade the court. If the court want to watch some of those, they can do it at their own time and so forth. But these are the aspects that we believe will be able to present to the court, and we believe they were very compelling. So it was indeed a decision. Yes.
How did we select the international lawyers from outside South Africa? How did they come to our attention, and what decisions were made around? I think it's Negrela, KC, and Professor Lowe.
Yeah, it's obviously the work that they've done in the space of international law, the articles, the books, and so forth, which made them to be legible expertise, but also their commitment to humanity. So all those aspects came into the picture.
So sticking with the case that was made and going a level deeper, you alluded to, of course, so we tried to establish genocidal acts, and this was something that different lawyers did, but obviously Advocate Hasim did very well up at the beginning, and then it was down to Advocate Ngugai Tobi to really go into the question of intent and showing, what senior Israeli leaders have been saying, how that's been filtering down onto the ground. The Israeli case came back and said, well, look, we're cherry picking examples. There's no evidence that there's a government-wide program to commit genocide. What do you think of how they responded to our case on intent? Because, of course, this is the hardest thing to prove when it comes to genocide.
Yeah, obviously, their response was astonishing, to say the least, because one of the things they raised was that the speeches by the Prime Minister, the President, the Minister of Defense, and should not be taken literal. It was just political speak or rhetoric. You can't take the speech of a Prime Minister as rhetoric. The Prime Minister speaks policy. Once the Prime Minister speaks with such executive powers, it's the policy of the state. Who else will you get policy from? And it shows the intent. And I think, as you said, Advocate Ngugai Tobi did demonstrate that after all those speeches, the generals and the soldiers on the ground, they understood it to mean exactly what the Prime Minister was saying, even singing about it, and they were actioning it on the ground, doing as per the policy position of the state of Israel. So their point on this, that it needed the cabinet, the war, and so forth, the platform. It was just to shift the responsibility or the blame. The reality is that they have spoken, and what they have said is policy, and that policy was acted upon.
And the thing is, you would never expect a state to have an official document which says, right, today the genocide begins at 8 a.m.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
yeah,
you're not going to get,
yeah, it's not possible.
But yeah. I think one really strong point that we did make is that, I mean, some of the statements here just go so far, even in other cases of genocide, you don't have such explicit statements from such senior people within the government. And then the decision in our case as well to link that on the ground was something I didn't feel that there was a full response to from the Israeli side.
Yeah, no, they could not, because they had no rebuttal to it. It's factual, it's real, and you see it on the ground. You see it with the work that is being done. And I mean, even from the statement you quoted of yesterday of the Prime Minister, it's clear. He is very clear that they don't see any state of Israel beyond the war. After the war of Palestine, there won't be any. They don't see a two-state solution. For them, there must be no Palestine. So what are they denying? They can't deny it. It's real, it's factual, they're acting on it.
Let's come to where to from here, because South Africa put across a sterling case. It's hard, maybe we're biased, but it's hard to see how the judges would completely disregard our case and how we wouldn't prevail at all. But there are many different scenarios here. I think the first scenario that we need to consider is, what if we get everything that we've asked for? And that would be a seismic moment, potentially in world history, if the International Court of Justice were to say, actually, this military campaign must stop. South Africa would have effectively got the world's highest court to mandate something like a ceasefire.
Yes, we firstly, that is the first place. We expect and we call for the court to do that, to call for an immediate cessation of the military operation, for a ceasefire, for humanitarian aid. That obviously it's our first call.
Yeah. What do you think the next steps would be if we got everything we wanted, and how would we go about trying to secure implementation?
Yeah, it is firstly the enforcement. Obviously, the state of Israel has already signaled that they may not want to abide by that. But I think the international pressure will be just impossible to ignore by the state of Israel, because the whole group will be united. Even their friends, they will end up being isolated. Even their friends in the US will end up being under pressure, even amongst their own population. You have seen there's already protests, and I believe that is the reason why they are more clearer now about a two-state solution. In Britain, there are protests, and France, and so forth. So once there is more of a factual finding by the court, it will also help the NGOs across the globe, civil societies, to put pressure on their governments to pressurize the state of Israel to abide by this decision. And if they don't, we can still take the matter to the Security Council, where, as you are aware, the US has vetoed a lot of other decisions. And if vetoed, we can still take the matter to the General Assembly itself of the UN. You'll remember South Africa was expelled for not abiding by decisions of organs of the UN. So those are all processes that we'll have to look into.
It becomes very uncomfortable for those states that have supported Israel in this in its activities in Gaza, because many of them have accused us of hypocrisy, of flouting international law, or of not being as condemnatory of Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russia situation. But suddenly they're going to have to turn around and make a decision. Do they agree with the highest UN court in the world, or are they going to abandon all that sweet talking about the global, what do they call it, the international order, the global rule order?
Yeah, they have no choice. I mean, if we have to maintain a rules-based international order.
The rules-based order.
Yeah,
exactly.
we have to respect decisions of such an important organ of the UN, because that will also filter down to even states themselves, where internally in the states people must respect court orders. It is important for the global rule of law that they abide, and I believe they will. And they will not only on their own, some of them will be frog-marched by their citizens to abide by this decision in their own country. So I believe that it is important that the court make the finding, and that an international rule of law is asserted to by the entire global community. So I don't see any state escaping from this important obligation.
What happens if the court rules against us? We have to hold that possibility out. And I guess one of the scenarios, the best case scenario is they give us everything we want. The worst case scenario is they give us nothing that we want. And they say that, they're not going to issue any of our provisional measures. What do you think that would mean for this wider issue going forward?
Yeah, it will be a setback, obviously, for the rule of law. for peace in the occupied Gaza and Palestine. But I think we will still have made our point. We have shifted, as you said earlier. It's a conversation by academics, civil society, in various UN multilateral fora. So we will just need to put pressure in those platforms where we are to continue with the struggle. But we will have exposed, we have already exposed the propaganda and the hypocrisy of the global system when it comes to holding states, irrespective of who they are, to account.
And after this provisional measures stage, if there is a further stage, and if the court wants to look into this further, can you take us through, how you see this unfolding from here and the kind of timeline for the full case itself and the actual merits? And we've got an election coming up, so I guess one of the questions is, after 2024, will that future government, still have the commitment for this case, which could go 2-3 years into the future? Are you committed to seeing this through to the end of the case?
Yes, and I believe we are still the future government, so we are committed to see it through. As it will take some years, maybe 2 to 3 years. We will prosecute the substance of the case and ensure that it's fully ventilated in the ICJ with all the experts that we have dealing with various aspects. And we will expect, obviously, there will be many other states joining. The state of Palestine is already indicated. Germany, I believe there could be more that will join. So it will be that kind of a matter which the matters will be really have to be looked at factually with forensic eye and detail. So I believe that it will be one of those matters which will redefine the geopolitics, including the situations in war zones.
What do you make of Germany's decision to join this case and effectively to come in on the side of Israel, and also Namibia's response to Germany, who unfortunately don't have the best track record when it comes to questions of genocide?
Yeah, I think Namibia has put a very compelling argument that Germany has got no moral standing to deal with this matter. So I don't know who will be having that moral standing and credibility, but it's clear that it's not going to be just a smooth sailing for any country. It's a matter that will boil down to the facts and the law.
Absolutely. Coming back to the personal, now that we've looked at the case, what has this moment meant for you and for your career, and how do you reflect on being the person central in our government to this historic move?
Yeah, obviously it has been a humbling experience being mandated by the president to represent the country and lead the team, standing on the shoulders of giants like Nelson Mandela, seeing what he stood for and what he signed for as a genocide. Me being part of the team that brings it to life was indeed a very humbling experience, and I believe also for the entire legal team that was there, including the South African ambassador. It was indeed a very humane and humbling experience.
Are you worried about any countermeasures? Israel hasn't taken kindly in the past to states who have challenged it in terms of the cabinet. I'm sure we've thought about the different scenarios and what this could mean in terms of Israel taking countermeasures against us. I don't know why they would, because we haven't done anything, except go to a court and ask a court to rule. And if the court rules against us, we'll accept it. But I've heard some jokes, about, we don't really want Israel to pursue countermeasures against us because we're not in the best position to respond if that kind of thing happens. I don't want to talk too much about load shedding and all of that. But what do you think in terms of the risks and what we're weighing in terms of Israel potentially taking countermeasures?
I think the biggest risk the globe faces is the collapse of a rules-based system. And that is why the globe should be worried. People must be happy that we are following a rules-based system. We are asserting the international system of dispute resolution. Why would you want to punish a state for that? In fact, you should be punishing the ones who are collapsing the multilateral institutions of the globe, because we can't have a world where there's no order, which is not based on rules. The opposite of it will be anarchy. So we are obviously concerned, but we don't see how such retribution will be justified in any context, whether politically, economically, or even legally. It won't be justified. In fact, us taking the matter to the ICJ is in the interest of the rule of law, of a rules-based international order.
And have you noticed any kind of countermeasures? Is the government aware of any kind of countermeasures at the moment that have been taken?
No.
Well, Minister Lamola, thank you very much for joining us on SMWX. I think it's a really fascinating moment in our country's history and in world history, and we're really appreciative that at this key time when you must be very busy, you've graced our audience. And we look forward to the future and potentially having you back one of these days to assess how the case has gone.
Thank you very much, and to the viewers. Thank you.
Aye.